What's the date today? Well, the 28th. What's the day?
All right, we're ready to begin. Thanks for coming out today, and we're caught in between these holidays, right? So, but we're keeping rolling with it, and that's great. Here we are in the book of Daniel. We're going to be in chapter 7, Daniel chapter 7 today, morning, whatever it is. And yeah, we'll figure out our days and nights here, and it's all good. Daniel chapter 7 is really the beginning of the prophecies in the book of Daniel. In chapters 1 through 6, we had a lot of the stories. Remember that? The historical narratives sections in there. In Daniel chapter 2, we had the prophetic dream of King Nebuchadnezzar. And as well as we understand chapter 2, we see that knowledge comes to bear in Daniel chapter 7 as well. So Daniel chapter 7, just to begin here with, it is really a prophecy that echoes Daniel chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Some contrast, though. In chapter 2, it was Nebuchadnezzar's dream. In chapter 7, it's going to become Daniel's vision in his dream. Another contrast is in chapter 2, Daniel's the interpreter. In chapter 7, there's going to be an angel that's the interpreter of the vision and dream to Daniel. So in chapter 2, it was a glorious statue. Remember that? It was probably so glorious that Nebuchadnezzar wanted to make an image of himself, kind of paralleling that. In chapter 7, it's not a glorious statue in God's mind. It's a horrible beast. So, so from chapter 2, you almost have it from man's perspective. Chapter 7, you're getting it all from God's perspective. Another contrast is the human statues in 4 parts, with the head, the breastplate, the loins, and the feet. Remember that? In chapter 7, it's going to be 4 inhumane beasts. So not all connected, but they're going to be symbolized in beast form. So in another contrast, in chapter 2, the statue is destroyed by the stone. In chapter 7, these beasts will be destroyed by God. So some similarities there and some different things. So that's kind of the idea there. Let me just read a quote here I have about prophecy, because as I mentioned, chapter 7 and on is all prophecy. Now, some of it is still historical prophecy, because Daniel, of course, lived during the head of gold, right? He lived during the empire of the Medes and the Persians. So Daniel, going to Daniel chapter 2, he saw 2 of those things, whether how they're being depicted there in the statue or the beast. But you have to remember what's really unique about it is that even though Daniel was living there at the time of Babylon, said, "You, Nebuchadnezzar, are this head of gold." At the same time, how did he predict in his time that the Medes and the Persians would conquer them at the apex of the Babylonian Empire? Pretty remarkable prophecy, right? So, and then how did he and portray that world power? And even then next to Rome. And we talked about all those things. So because we talked about them, it really helped to unlock chapter 7. Now, those who see no correlation between chapter 2 and chapter 7, are going to go all over the place with their interpretations of this. I even heard interpretations that try to fit America into chapter 7, and you can get all sorts of crazy ideas with eagles symbolizing America and the Air Force. You can get real bizarre. But it is historically accepted that the interpretations that of the world empires, that was the interpretation that was accepted the whole way up to late 2nd century times. So it's not like new, we just put this together in the past 10 years. This has historically been accepted as the interpretations of this. So, but let me give you a quote here on prophecy. Prophecy is a declaration, and I can't pronounce this guy's name, but I really like this quote. Prophecy is a declaration of future events such as no human wisdom or forecast is sufficient to make. It depends on the knowledge of the innumerable contingencies of human affairs, which belong exclusively to an omniscient God, so that from its very nature, prophecy must be divine revelation. I kind of like what he said there. And what he says, only an all-knowing God could really lay out prophecy for us. And because it is accurate, it must be divine revelation. And that's exactly the impression that we leave when we will finish the book of Daniel, that, whoa, this is just so precise in what is being talked about, communicated, and it can't be anything other than the Word of God. So that's the idea there. So now, as I mentioned before, chapters 1 through 6, if you want to look at it this way, is historical for the most part, except some things in chapter 2. Chapter 7 to the end of the book is mostly prediction, prophecy. So, and really what's going to happen here too, there's going to be, by the end of the book here, there's going to be 4 different visions that Daniel has. There's going to be 4 different divisions and of prophecies. Now, with that, I want to say this. If you look here at chapter 7, verse 1, it says, in the first year of Belshazzar. So now we're going back, right? We're going back before the Medes and the Persians. We're going back to remember the feast that Belshazzar had at the end. We're going back. So chapter 7, if you want to give it a time frame, it's probably 9 years after Nebuchadnezzar died. Because remember, you had the sons, you had the battle for succession that happened then. Remember that? So you have about 9 years, which brings us to the first year of Belshazzar. Does that make sense? Because you had sons killed, you had all the fighting for the throne after Nebuchadnezzar. And eventually, in about the 9th year, according to history, Belshazzar's there. So when it says the first year of Belshazzar, this is Daniel's going to have this vision, this dream given to him, and it's going to come in the first year of Belshazzar, 9 years after Nebuchadnezzar. So, of course, this is going back in time. This is a chronological here, so keep that in mind. Now, one of the things I want to share with you is this question. Why then do we wait till chapter 7? Why now to give this revelation? Why give this whole panorama with all the extra details? Why give it now? Belshazzar's there. We're still in the Babylonian Empire. Daniel gets this vision. And And we haven't even had the changeover yet of the Medes and the Persians coming in yet. So why is God giving it now? You know what I mean? You have to kind of ask yourselves that. And I guess trying to answer that question, looking at it from the people's point of view, the Jews, there they are in captivity. Now, we already looked at it. They're going to be in captivity for 70 years. Remember that? 70 years because of the not obeying the Sabbath. Do you remember those things? So they have 70 years of captivity. But for the most people, they probably don't pay much attention to the scriptures, the Bible, the prophets. You know what I mean? They're all in captivity and they're thinking, man, we're probably going to be here forever, right? Nebuchadnezzar's gone. We've seen other leaders and Babylonian come up and they're killed off, and Belshazzar's here, and we're still in captivity. And they're probably thinking to themselves, we're never getting back home. They're probably thinking to themselves, you know what? God is done with us. And you think about it, their whole identity is now changed, right? Because you went through the years of Nebuchadnezzar. You've gone through these monarchs of Babylon. And now Belshazzar's in there, and he's worse than Neb in a way. And then you have this this mindset, probably of God's people, thinking, God's forgotten us. He wrote us off. We're done. God had to change the plans, right? I kind of think that's why this vision comes here at the beginning of the reign of Belshazzar. So it's like this. God has not forgotten you. God still has a plan and a purpose for you. You still have a number of those 70 years to still be in captivity, but God did not write you off. So with all that being said, now there's chapter 7 is a reiteration of chapter 2 in a way. It's going to depict the same Gentile world powers, but it's going to do so with more detail than before. That's important to know. Now, let me just read Daniel chapter 7, because you're probably thinking, what's all in Daniel chapter 7? And I'll probably read to about verse 15, just to give you an idea and to let our minds sink in on this text here for a little bit. Babylon. Daniel saw a dream and visions in his mind as he lay on his bed. Then he wrote the dream down and related the following summary of it. Daniel said, I was looking in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up a great sea, and four great beasts were coming up from the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion, and it had wings of an eagle. I kept looking until its wings were plucked, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. A human mind was also given to it. Now, let's not get crazy with interpretations. Let's not think this is an alien, right? We will break all this down more later, but I'm just reading it for you to get an idea. Now, as I'm reading it, if you put mind, that's Babylon. And then the second, it would make sense. Verse 5. And behold, another beast, a second one, resembling a bear. And it was raised on one side, and 3 ribs were in its mouth between its teeth. And thus they said to it, Arise, devour much meat. After this I kept looking, and behold, another one, like a leopard, which had it on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I kept looking in the night vision, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful, terrifying, extremely strong, and it had large iron teeth. It devoured and crushed and trampled down the remainder with its feet. And it was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. While I was contemplating the horns, behold, another horn, a little one, came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were plucked and pulled out by its root before it. And behold, the horn possessed eyes like the eyes of men, and a mouth uttering great boasts. I kept looking, said Daniel in verse 9, until thrones were set up, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His vesture was white, was like white snow, and his hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was ablaze with flames. Its wheels were burning with fire. A river of fire was flowing and coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands were attending him, and myriads upon myriads were standing before him. The court sat, the books were open. Then I kept looking because of the sound of the boastful words which the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain, and its body was destroyed and given to the burning of fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but an extension of life was granted to them for an appointed period of time. I kept looking in the night vision, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like the Son of Man was coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion. And it says there, glory and a kingdom, that all the people, nations, and men of every language might serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. Verse 15, I close with, as for me, Daniel, my spirit was distressed within me, and the vision in my mind kept alarming me. So here it is. We're given the first of the two visions they were given at the time here of Belshazzar. And it depicts the four nations we've already talked about in beast form. So keep that in mind. So as it says there, that this dream is kind of neat here. He begins in verse 1. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream. First time Daniel has a dream that we know of, right? Daniel's usually the one interpreting dreams. Here, Daniel receives a dream. This dream is really like a in some way, a revelatory vision. It says dream and visions. So all what that means there, I don't know. Is he in a dreamlike state? These visions, but he certainly is seeing these things, and he's describing what he saw. And what we have and what I read was what he was looking at, and he was very curious about these beasts, these movements, what they were doing, what was happening. And he was so distressed because of the dream. Now, before we saw Nebuchadnezzar distressed and frustrated, right? And remember, he called all the Chaldeans, you get that the whole thing pranced in before him. Daniel, he's laying there. I can't call those guys, but there is an angel in the next verse that I didn't read. He's going to interpret it. Now, what's also neat that I see here in verse 1 is that Daniel did something. Once he saw the dream, what did he do? He wrote it down, recorded it, because he knew it was important to remember it. How many times do we dream something weird and you remember that morning, but by the time afternoon comes, you try to relate it to someone. I can't remember that dream I had, right? Daniel knew things about dreams, right? They can be fleeting. So he wrote it down. And that's important to know because what we have here is preserved as Daniel remembers seeing it. And then not just did he write it down, but at the end of verse 1, it says what? He revealed it. You know what that means? Daniel went about, I don't know who, but he told it. He told it to others. He probably, most definitely told it to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I don't know if he told it to Belshazzar because, I don't think he would have appreciated it. But he did share this information. So this wasn't something Daniel was keeping to himself. This is something that, Daniel shared. Did he share it with the other ones? I don't know who all he shared it with, but it does say that he related the following summary of it. So now what's neat about that, and what's neat that he recorded those words, is that there's going to be a lot of criticism on the book of Daniel from people who don't believe in prophecy. And they're going to say, no, a late Daniel wrote about this after he saw these kingdoms. And they wrote in the 2nd century BC. And it was, there's so many errors with that type of thinking. It doesn't match the document dates, doesn't use. And he said when he wrote this, what king was in power. And not only did he say it and keep it to himself, but he shared it with others, right? So this wasn't a secret thing. He knew that God was communicating something significant that his people, the Jews and believers, would need to understand. That's why he wrote it. That's why he related it. Now, the major point of this whole vision, the major point in verse 9 and following there, he kept looking until thrones were set up and the Ancient of Days took his seat. So if you're looking for a theme or a key word, you might want to write down kingdom. If you're using these sheets here and you're on writing chapter summary 7, because it's really about the kingdom. The kingdom is the main theme of this. And verse 13, I kept looking in the night vision, right? And behold, within the clouds of heaven, one like the Son of Man was coming, right? This is about his kingdom. So there's 3 aspects that we're going to look at today regarding the kingdom. Then we're going to get back next week and break apart the beast and those things. But we're going to focus on the kingdom. So to do that, we're going to answer 3 questions. Who, what, and when, right? And where is already given in the text. It's a dominion over all the earth, right? Verse 14, dominion, glory, kingdom, that all the people of the nations and men of every language might serve him. So the where is everywhere, right? But who, what, and when is what we'll look at. So let's go to the who in verse 13. The who is the coronation of the king. We saw that there in verse 9. This Ancient of Days is there. In verse 13, we see that the Son of Man is there. And verse 14, to him was given dominion, Lord of Lords and King of Kings, right? We know that title. But he is not crowned king yet. He's not crowned King of Kings. It's his title. We can never take that away. It's his right. We can never take that away. But there is a crowning day for him. And that crowning day is when he subjects and destroys all these other kingdoms. Gentile world powers are destroyed. It will be the most glorious event ever that we will be there. We're going to witness this. This is going to be like the pinnacle of it all. So Daniel sees this vision, and we get more details about the end, how this happens after these Gentile world powers are gone. there's going to be God setting up his kingdom. And there's the crowning, the coronation of the king. And this would take place at the end of the times of the Gentiles. This takes place, we might say, just prior to the millennial reign of Christ. Kind of neat. How far could it be away? I was just talking to Judy about that here today. Remember in our study of Revelation, it says, in the tribulation, but protect the oil and the wine. Remember it says that? I'm not sure where, but in the book of Revelation, you can Google it, it's there. With every country wanting to go green and the whole green thing, no one's blind to that. What all causes it can be debated and, politicized and all those things. But one thing that verse reminds me of, protect the oil and the wine, we're never getting away from oil completely. Oil will still be the power and the most treasured thing when the tribulation happens. That's kind of interesting because, don't think we're going to be living in these perfect man-made kingdoms and communities that have zero emissions and everything's going to be great. No one will get cancer. Everyone's going to be breathing clean air, right? Everything's going to be hunky-dory. We're not going to get that far before Christ comes back. That's important to know. And when he comes back, those things will be, it's going to be glorious. The crowning of Christ, we know that it's going to take place prior to the 1,000-year reign of Christ, right after the tribulation. But I want you to see in Scripture, and we're going to look at a number of passages, that this isn't just exclusive to Daniel. This prophecy is woven throughout the Old Testament time and time again. For example, let's go to Genesis chapter 49. Just because this fits around the Christmas time and just coming from Christmas, we looked at this, I know, on a Sunday. Genesis chapter 49. Probably won't be able to find it right now. And verse, let me see where this is here. Okay, and let's go to verse 10. The scepter shall not depart from Judah. Now that is a word that is on his feet. Now here's the cryptic word for Christ, until Shiloh comes. Do you remember what that word means? It means the one whose right it is. So someday he has the right to the scepter. He has the right by his name. And, and then it says, and to him shall be the obedience of the people. So everyone is going to obey him. When's this going to come? And the millennial reign of Christ, right? Right after the tribulation, the coronation of this king, predicted here. Now, remember, and this is going back, this is probably familiar territory. I'm glad it is. 2 Samuel chapter 7. Remember, David wanted to build a house for God. And, David gets all excited about it. He tells the prophet, hey, I'm going to build a house for God. He says, that's a great idea. The prophet goes to God. He says, no, that's not a good idea. Why didn't you consult me? David has too much blood on his hands. But his son will build me a house. And in 2 Samuel chapter 7, we have this idea, verse 12. When your days are complete and you lie down with your fathers, I will raise up from your descendants after you, who will come forth from you, and I will establish what? His kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom. And what does it say there? Forever. Now, David's thinking in terms of his son, right? But then he has to think, wait a second, my son will die someday, but this is going to be eternal, forever. Verse 14, I'll be a father to him. He'll be a son to me. Now, this refers to his literal son. There's a dual meaning here. When he commits iniquity, we know Christ didn't, right? Solomon did. I will correct him with the rod of men and the strokes of the Son of Man. But my loving kindness shall not depart from him, as I took away from Saul, whom I removed from before you. Remember, king, the line doesn't king. He was going to be their king. But verse 16, your house and your kingdom shall endure before me. How long? Forever. And your throne shall be established forever. In accordance with all these words and all this vision, so Nathan spoke to David. So there we go. Solomon's going to build a temple, but guess what? That temple is going to be destroyed anyhow. But there's going to be one that's built, one that's going to last, one that God says is going to stand before me forever. Now, as we go back to Daniel for a minute, and you see this, verse 13, I kept looking in the night vision, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, right? One like the Son of Man was coming. What's he coming for? Look at verse 9. I kept looking until the thrones were set up, right? So this idea here. Now, Psalm 2, Psalm 45, Psalm 72, Psalm 110 is all about Christ taking this throne. Let me go to another one in Isaiah, just because it's still Christmas, right? Isaiah chapter 9. I'm sure you heard this preached every Christmas, or just about. I did not preach it this Christmas. Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. This is that descendant that was still anticipated, that would establish an eternal kingdom and throne for the house of David. Because right now, where's the throne of David? There is none, right? There's no throne of David right now. There's no king over there in Israel right now. But the promise of Christmas, for a child will be born to us, a son will be given to us, and the government. Now, this is a governmental structure. This is important to understand, because those who are amillennialists are those who don't believe in a literal 1,000-year reign of Christ. They believe that the church conquers this world and we usher in the eternal state. So they don't take anything literal of a 1,000-year period. They're amillennialists, against a millennial reign of Christ. Well, if you're against a millennial reign of Christ, you can't have a system of government. This won't happen. And you really kind of contradict this verse then, because it says in the government, this is a structure, this is an organized way of doing things, will rest on his shoulders. And he will be called, we have all these names there, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. And verse 7, there will be no end to the increase of his government. Talking about, once again, going back to 2 Samuel. How long does it last? Forever. Going back to Genesis 49, we had the promise of a kingdom till Shiloh comes, right? He would take the scepter from the line of Judah. We know in Revelation, Christ comes as a lion, right? From the line of Judah. All these things. Isn't this amazing just how all this just pieces together? To establish it, says verse 7 there of Isaiah, to establish it, to uphold it with justice and righteousness from then on. And then for how long after? Forever. Yeah. So once he establishes his kingdom, it lasts forever. Now, remember when he was before Pilate, and, Pilate's like, well, where's your kingdom? My kingdom's not of this world. And what he was literally saying, it's not here yet. Don't worry about it, right? They rejected me as king. It's not going to be here in your lifetime. But as Daniel kept looking, it's coming, right? As verse 13, Daniel kept looking in the night vision with the clouds, and one like the Son of Man was coming, right? So Christ didn't lie to Pilate. He just said, hey, you don't have to worry. I don't have my kingdom here. And if I did, you wouldn't be in your spot, would you? So, yeah, so that's kind of it. Zechariah, also chapter 9, talks about the whole coronation of the king. Verse 9, going back to Daniel chapter 7. I kept looking until the thrones were set up. Now, is that what your version says? Set up, cast down. King James uses some different languages.
Cast down.
Yeah. Okay, just to clarify some of this. There's different ideas of this here and what this means. I'm going with the Oriental idea behind this, and I like the idea set up, but I will explain the throw down position. And in the Middle East, what would happen when a throne was established? They would cast down like pillows, things for the king to sit upon. Those things. That's what that means when King James is saying thrown down. My version just says set up because it just kind of takes away that confusion of what that means there. And when it says thrones in the plural, some think that this could mean for the Trinity. Some thinks that this could mean for I don't know if I take it as that. I take it as for the throne of the Father and the Son. That's how I kind of do. He sits at his right hand. But there are different ways that you could look at that and not be wrong, but we find out who's right in the end. Does that make sense? So I don't make a big deal about that. Now, in verse 9, he says, I kept looking or behold, says the King James, right? This phrase occurs 6 times here in this passage. And it literally means this. He was constantly looking. So this vision had his full attention. He was zoned in on it, zeroed in on it. And he kept looking until it says, not until, but I kept looking intently, I might add there, until the thrones were set up and the Ancient of Days took his seat. Now, what's interesting about this verse, it parallels Revelation. So if you go over to Revelation in chapter 4 and 5, and chapter 4, just a little bit, this beginning, John records it this way. After these things, I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven. And then verse 4, around the throne were 24 thrones. This is for the 24 elders. You can see that there in Daniel if you want to as well. Representative of the church age. So these thrones, I kind of see it as God the Father, God the Son. Is there a throne for the Holy Spirit? Could be, he's a person of God. Could it be for angels too? Could be. Could it be for the people of God as in a descending order? Could be. But I just like to simplify it for my own mind, the Father, the Son, right? But if you bring Revelation into it, I see where you would get that. And then he says, I saw in the right hand of him, verse 5, chapter 5 of Revelation, who sat upon the throne, a book written inside and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. Now remember that these seals are going to be unleashed. Remember that? It breaks into seal judgments, trumpet judgments, and bowl judgments. So if you were here in Revelation, you would get that. And, and what happens is with this title deed he holds and has these seals, as he unleashes each of them, it's his way in the tribulation of reclaiming the earth. He's going to purge the earth. And then, John says, no one in heaven, earth, under the earth was able to open the book or to look in it. So everybody in heaven kind of weeps, right? And then he says in verse 6, and I saw between the throne with four living creatures and the elders a lamb standing as if what? He was slain. Who's this? The crucified Christ. And it says they're having eyes of, having seven horns, seven eyes, which are the seven spirits of God sent out into all the earth. I'm not getting into all that. We did that. And he came and he what? He took the book out of the right hand of him who sat on the throne. So, what's neat about this is that takes place when? This is the coronation of the king, right? So this is going to happen. And then it says, verse 9, worthy are you to take the book, to break its seals, for you were slain, purchased for God with your blood, the men from every tribe, tongue, and people, and nations. So we find a strong parallel between that and Daniel chapter 7, verse 9. His throne is set up, his vesture white snow, his hair and his head like pure wool. His throne was ablaze with flames. Its wheels were burning with fire. So we find very, very many similarities there. So he's called the Ancient of Days as well. And that's no other than God himself. Now, Psalm 29, verse 10, just a verse for you here. Psalm 29 in verse 10, it says this. The Lord sat as king at the flood. Yea, the Lord sits as king forever. So there he is. And to sit means that they're ruling in their power. He says, I kept looking in the night vision, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like the Son of Man. Now that's really interesting that we find this phrase, Son of Man. But coming from heaven, right? So you know that this is God in flesh. And really, it is what's unique about this is it's the only place in the Old Testament where we find Jesus referred to as the Son of Man. Really unique there. And it's the designation that Jesus called himself a lot. Now, some people like Jehovah's Witnesses and those who want to diminish Christ would say, oh, see, he's just the Son of Man. If you say that, it doesn't really fit the context too well, does it? He's coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days. So it comes up to the Father and was presented before him. And he was given what? Dominion. Who's going to reign all eternity? The Son. This is the coronation of the King, the Son of Man. So with this, let's just look at Matthew chapter 16, verse 27. I just want to show you a couple of these instances where Jesus refers to himself by this title. So Matthew chapter 16 and verse 27. Jesus said this, for the Son of Man is going to come. Now, that's neat, right? What did Daniel see in his vision? He got a glimpse of the future, didn't he? He got a glimpse. Now, how can God give him a glimpse of the future? God's already there, right? So he relates exactly what's happening. Could you imagine having this vision and seeing this? You actually get a small glimmer through this. And Christ then says here, the Son of Man, and he even uses that designation, probably putting it down there in Daniel, right? Is going to come in the glory of the Father with his angels, and he will then repay every man according to his deeds. What's he doing? He's going to come and he's going to set up the millennial kingdom, right? Now, all those who get into the millennial kingdom are going to be what? Born again Christians, if you want to use lingo like that. And they're going to be people from, well, we'll talk about that in a minute, where all the other people come from. But there'll be normal life that happens in that millennial 1,000 years. We talked about that. So let me just go to maybe, let's see, maybe one more verse here. Let's go to Matthew 25. Let's go to Matthew chapter 25. And as we're there, this is after describing the tribulation times and those things. Let's go down to verse 31. Matthew 25, 31. It says there, but when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his what? Glorious throne forever. Now that relates back to 2 Samuel 7, right? That goes back to Genesis 49. Do you see how this is going to happen? And what's remarkable about this, it didn't happen yet. So it's not like we missed the best part. The best of Christianity is yet to come. It is. The best of it is still ahead. So Daniel sees this. And isn't this an amazing thing that Daniel gets this much of a glimpse into this? And then, John gets a little bit more of it in Revelation, but all of it ties together, doesn't it? It's inseparable. Okay, so going back to Daniel chapter 7, verse 13, it says there that he comes in the clouds of heaven. Now, clouds are symbolic of deity. And that parallels 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 17, which talks about the saints and the rapture, right? Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with him in the clouds, and the deity of God, if you would, to meet the Lord in the air. So, and then Revelation 1:7, it says, behold, he comes with the clouds. So the clouds are a symbol of his deity that he brings to earth, or to call us up out of this earth. And remember what they said of Jesus after at his ascension, when they were gathered around after his resurrection. Why do you stand gawking up into the heavens, right? Or into the clouds? And then they said, this same Jesus, as you've seen him go into the clouds, so he shall come in like manner. I summarized that a little bit. But that's the whole gist of it. He went up to the clouds. He's coming back to earth to claim his title and to claim his crown as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. All right. Well, let's go to another part of Revelation chapter 11. Maybe I'll stop with this one here at this point. You see how all of this intersects with one another. Revelation, Daniel, all these things meet, so to speak. Revelation chapter 11. And let's begin in verse 17. We give you thanks, O Lord God, the Almighty, who are and who were, because you have what? Taken your great power and have begun to reign. Now, they say this here in the tribulation period. It's starting. It's starting. They're getting excited because they know that, you know what? Seeing God pour out his wrath upon the Jews for their rejection, destroying Gentile world powers, that Christ is about to come and to reign. And it's something that they even look forward to there in the tribulation saints. Okay. Now, when he comes, just to give you a couple ideas here, in verse 14, going back to Daniel chapter 7, a couple words to keep in mind. Number one, his kingdom will be that of authority. Authority. It says there, and it was given, takes the title deeds from the Father, and it is given to him to redo everything for the millennium. Kind of neat. That 1,000 years. He's going to have dominion, glory, and a kingdom. It's going to be his kingdom. He's going to sit on the throne of David, right? Fulfilling the prophecies there of the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And authority is given to him. Now, that means all authority is given to him. It fulfills Psalm 2 that says, I have set my king, God the Father says, I have set my king upon Mount Zion. He's going to reign from there. And his reign from Israel is going to, Psalm 8 verse 6 says, thou hast made him to have authority over the works of thy hands. You have put everything under his feet. So everyone is subject to his government. His character will be one of authority, but it will also be one of this too. Here's another key word: honor. Everyone in the millennial reign of Christ will honor him. Now, are you a little frustrated with today's world that, you know what, Christ doesn't receive the honor? You think about it. He doesn't receive the honor at Christmas, doesn't receive the honor at Easter. This world is so absorbed with itself, there's no honor given to him. And that should frustrate us, right? As Christians, seeing Christ so dishonored, disrejected from our world today. But when he comes with authority to rule as a monarch, as a dictator, it's going to be one of honor. And you know what? Those who know him will be glad to give him that honor. You know, it's not like an earthly king that makes mistakes, right? Makes bad calls. You know, prideful Nebuchadnezzar, right? You're not going to have a Biden or a Trump, right? Rolling over the earth. That just doesn't look very well in the end, right? Look at the end of each of them. That didn't go well, right? But you're going to have Christ, and he's going to have honor, and the people will be pouring honor out to him. And it was given to him dominion, glory, and a kingdom. And they're going to serve him that way. So no one's going to question his authority. And let's just talk about the kingdom. The kingdom. What's glory and a kingdom? The kingdom, I don't got time to go into all this, but I just kind of summon this up. You know some of this. It's going to be where everything is subject to him, not just man, but beasts. Remember the prophecies? Lions lay down with the lambs, and children holding snakes. It's the whole reversal of the curse. The ground will become productive again, right? Man doesn't clean up this earth. Christ cleans it up, right? He takes care of it all. And everything that the curse brought is reversed. His rule is going to be one of plenty, one of goodness, one that is a blessing to every people. It says glory in a kingdom that all the people, nations, and men of every language, might serve him. This is kind of neat. Now, let me conclude with this. Who's going to be there? The saints are going to be there. Remember in our series of resurrections we looked at in Revelation? I know, I keep going back to that. You're saying, man, wish I was there. We did series of resurrection. They are resurrected before the 1,000-year reign to fulfill the promises of that was made to them. Think about this. The Old Testament saints, all of them, that believed in the blood and looked forward to the blood of Christ are going to be there. Then you have the church age. We're going to be there because we come back in the clouds to reign with him. You're going to have the tribulation martyred saints coming back too. You will also have the saints that survive the tribulation. And the books are open, and there's a separation of the sheep and the goat judgment. And that goes back to Matthew. Remember that? So the ones who enter this 1,000 years are those who are saints. That's how it begins. But the tribulation saints that enter things, I am still stuck with Dion. No, I'm not kidding. We become, we all become what? We become the angels, right? So we're in glorified bodies. We're a Superman, a Superwoman, right? And that's great. I'm cool with that. So those ones that procreate, they will then have children during that 1,000-year reign, and their lives will be extended to like, what do we say, like maybe 120 years. So that there'll be like 10 generations of this wonderful reign of Christ. But then at the end of that, some of them are going to reject him, remember? But you think of who's there at the beginning. All the saints are there. The church age is there. The angels of heaven will be here ministering during that 1,000 years. It's going to be a whole reversal of the curse and a glorious time because we got to still get back through this chapter and look at all the yuckiness of Gentile world power, right? Any questions? Things you want to discuss there? Yeah.
What will?
Who, what, when? Yes. Who is going to be Christ? He'll be the king. What will be his kingdom? The extent of it. When is still future, right? He's coming in the clouds. So, and I kind of wrap some of that up next week as well. Yeah. But all the people will be there. It's going to be a great time. And, it's a time that really as Christians, we look forward to his coming in the rapture. And, we might not get to that. We might miss that. And in the sense of missing it with our fleshly bodies still alive. We still get our bodies then from the ground. That's okay. But that's really not the most exciting thing. I mean, his appearing, but I think the most exciting thing to me is this whole idea of seeing him crowned King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Amen. Seeing him come for the second time back to earth and reclaiming it. That's going to be the most exciting time in the history of the world.
And there's 1,000 years.
Yeah.
We're there.
We are there because we come back at the end of the tribulation. Remember?
But what if you're there and you hadn't died yet?
Then comes into the Matthew account, there in chapter 24, 25, 26, where you have the separation of the sheep and the goat. Those unbelievers who survive the tribulation, you can't enter the 1,000 years. If you did not believe, you are separated out. So, you're dead. You're slain.
We're going to die if we're in 1,000 years. We live 1,500, we'll die.
No, we come back in our glorified bodies.
What if it happened right now?
Okay, if the rapture happens right now, we go to heaven in spirit and soul. We have to wait till the rapture to get our bodies, right? Because that's what Paul said in Thessalonians. We don't prevent them, but we get our bodies then. So our bodies are glorified bodies like Christ. We will have then. We go back to heaven. at the rapture with our bodies. So that's going to be cool. It's like, whoa, this is I kind of was enjoying my spirit for a while. So then, then I get this body, but it's going to be a superhuman body, right? Which is kind of cool. I kind of like that. And probably have bionic arms and all these things we can do. We don't know yet. So, walk through walls, Christ did, right? So it'd be neat. We'd be testing ourselves out a little bit. Then, so we enjoy all that, and there's the marriage supper of the Lamb, all those things that take place. But then we come back in our glorified bodies. So we are in glorified bodies here, reigning with the tribulation saints who were saved. So we won't look really odd to them, like Casper. Oh, there's Casper the friend. Yeah, we're not going to look like Casper. We're going to have our bodies, right? So we won't be that strange to them. But what will be interesting, though, is I believe the angels will be visible. As we see there that, the throne's set up, it just seems like, to me, that millennial reign, the angels will be there. They could be very visible at that point in time. And it would be a different period of time that never happened before, where where people on earth actually get to see and walk with believers that are glorified. That's going to be so unusual. I can't fathom that, but that's a whole different stage of things. But that's what it will be. So we come back and we reign with Christ during that 1,000-year reign of Christ. So we will be, according to the Bible too, we will be given different positions according to our faithfulness here now and how we serve in that millennial reign of Christ, which is really cool. Yeah. Does that answer?
Yeah, I think.
We won't
I'm being
get,
stupid, I
we
know.
won't get cancer. We won't come back like a cancer.
Exactly.
When we're
We'll have
on earth,
glorified body. If we die during that tribulation.
Well, we would die. We won't go into the tribulation as
What does it
Christians.
happen right now?
If the tribulation can't happen until the rapture happens. So rapture happens first. So we are then raptured up. But if the rapture is delayed 50 years, we're probably all dead. And then
I will be.
our bodies are resurrected at the rapture. And then the 7 years happen. Does that make sense? And then we come back at the
our body
end.
will die.
Right, our body will be in the ground, but when we come back glorified, it never dies. Correct. It's purified. It won't see decay, just like Christ's body.
See, today it decays.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it does. It decays. That's what we do. That's
But
the
when
curse.
we go up in the sky, we'll get a new body. It'll never decay.
Exactly. Nice way to put it. Other questions, comments you want to ask? This is a great time to ask them. All right, let's pray. Father, thank you so much that you promised so much for us yet to see. We look forward to this crowning day where you are crowned King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and the people recognize you for who you really are and honor you and respect your authority, and to see you govern this world in such a glorious way. We thank you. We look forward to that. Thank you that these things were recorded for us. Daniel, as he was disturbed and writing these things down, and what a revelation you've given to him in the Old Testament, depicting these things and outlining these things, and how they just parallel the rest of Scripture in its entirety is just nothing but a miracle. And we thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Jeannie, I just voted off David.
Do what I learned.